I'm frequently asked if I ever hear of any Bigfoot sighting reports from near the area where I live. Well, the answer is yes, and what I want to do now is share one of those reports that I recently received, and this is concerning an encounter with a possible Sasquatch that happened back in 1963 or 64. And this took place near the old South Canadian River Bridge near the town of Calvin, Oklahoma, which is exactly where I grew up and went to school. Now, this old bridge that we're going to talk about, I believe it's over 100 years old. It's an old bridge, and it's one of those old bridges with the arches on it that'll probably be standing long after some of these newer ones are. So the river and the bridge that you see in this video, it's the same river and bridge that is talked about in this report, so you'll get the idea of exactly what it looks like. My son and his fiance accompanied me as I filmed this, and they're in the video as well. Now, like I say, this happened back in 1963 or 64. The individual that sent me this report has asked that his identity be kept confidential, so we'll certainly respect that. So now let's get on with the report as I received it. And he said, this gentleman said, I happened across your YouTube channel recently and found it very interesting. And he said, I grew up spending a lot of time in the town of Calvin, and said his grandparents lived there. And then he goes on, he said, I used to spend a lot of time around there running in the woods at night with friends and going down to the river. And that was before the new bridge went in. And he said, we even hung over the side of the old highway and the railroad bridge that was further downriver from that, and had a lot of fun at night. And I can relate to that because I did the same thing. And he says one time, he said himself, and he said there were three of us out at the old highway bridge, very late, and he said we were walking back to town. He said it must have been 2 in the morning or so, and we had just gotten off the bridge, and he said my friend said there's someone following us. And they looked back at the north end of the bridge and said there was a very large person or something coming onto the bridge. Said this individual was absolutely enormous. Said there was a full moon and they could see him quite clearly. And he said he or it was huge. We assumed it was a man at first, but he had to be 7 foot tall plus. And he started south toward us along the bridge at a sort of a lope. And he said, scared, we took off. He said, we were running along the road that ran toward the peanut plant and the old log cabin cafe. And if anybody that's watching this is from the Calvin area, and especially back then, the old log cabin cafe is not there anymore, and the peanut plant still is, but it's long out of business. But you'll know exactly the area that they're talking about. But he said, we were running along the road that went towards these places, the old log cabin cafe and the peanut plant. And he said after about 500 yards or so, we stopped and looked back, and he or it, whatever it was at the south end of the bridge, just standing there watching us. We were out of breath, and of course, and he wasn't chasing us, so we just stood there watching him in the moonlight, catching our breath. After a few minutes, a car approached from the north, and he or it walked off onto the east side of the road. We jogged on back to town, and that was that. I didn't tell my parents or grandmother about it because I was afraid they wouldn't let us roam around at night. But we three guys talked about it for decades afterward. This would have been about 1963 or 1964. Who knows? Was it a Sasquatch, or was it some guy out there in the middle of the night trying to scare some teenagers? We don't know. If it was a person, it was extremely large. Like we said, it was over 7 feet tall, or seemed to be. And it didn't seem to be wearing clothing unless it was something like coveralls, and maybe it was covered in fur. It's hard to explain. He said, please keep names confidential. I don't mind if you talk about the event in general terms. Not really much of a story anyway. Well, I disagree. I think it was a very good report, and there's also other reports that I've received from along that river. One from 15, 20 years ago I received that's just a few miles downriver from there. It involves a man that was fixing fence in those river bottoms, And while he was working on the fence, he got the feeling that something was watching him. And when he looked up, he noticed a Bigfoot crouched down in the brush watching him. And he described this creature as very large and covered in a reddish-brown hair. And this individual left the fencing that he was doing and vacated the area post-haste. So that's not the only report from down in that area. And say thank you to the individual that sent me this report. And that's about all I've got right now. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, well, please like and subscribe to this channel and stay tuned for more. And if you have a report that you would like to share with me and perhaps have shared on this channel, just send it to me in an email at bigfootandmore@yahoo.com. That's bigfootandmore@yahoo.com. As always, thanks for watching, and you guys take care.